poor bride rejected for being paralyzed. Until a single dad changed everything. You lied to me. You made me marry a cripple. The groom's voice tore through the church like thunder. And in that frozen silence, every camera turned toward her, the bride in the wheelchair, trembling under the rain of whispers, lace torn, makeup streaked, and eyes begging for someone to believe her. But no one did. In that grand cathedral of wealth and power, Mercy had no seat. She was just a stand-in bride, and a sister's sacrifice gone wrong. What would you have done in his place? Welcome to Emotional Echoes, a channel where emotions come alive, and every story leaves a lasting echo in your heart. Please subscribe to Emotional Echoes. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers so more souls can feel these stories. Stay with my video till the very end and let me know where you're watching from so I can see how far this story spreads. Now, let me tell you the story of the wedding that was never meant to happen. The music played softly inside the church, but Rachel could barely hear it. Her heart pounded louder than the violins. She felt every stare on her skin as she rolled her wheelchair down the aisle. The long white dress hiding the cold metal of her prosthetic leg. She kept her eyes on Tyler, the man who once said he loved her sister more than life itself. But now, his face twisted into something she couldn't recognize. When his eyes narrowed, the silence was instant. His voice cut through the air like glass. Wait, this isn't Rebecca. The whispers spread like fire. Fuses turning, phones lifting, the sound of cameras clicking. Rachel froze, hands trembling on her lap. She wanted to vanish, to melt into the marble floor. Tyler's steps echoed as he walked closer, ripping the veil away. For a second, his eyes widened in confusion. Then came the rage. You lied to me. What kind of sick joke is this? Her throat closed. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. It wasn't her fault. It was never her plan. But in that moment, no one cared. The mother of the groom gasped, her hand over her chest. You people deceived us. You brought a cripple to marry my son. Laughter mixed with gasps from the crowd. Rachel's face burned. She wanted to scream, but shame held her still. She whispered, her voice breaking, please, I didn't plan this. I was forced. Tyler's jaw tightened. Forced? You think anyone would force you to lie to me? He pushed her hand away, and the motion made the wheelchair tilt. The world spun. She fell hard, the sound of the metal leg hitting the floor echoing through the hall. Her dress tore, the prosthetic half visible, blood staining the lace. Someone gasped. Someone else recorded. No one helped. She looked up from the floor, hair tangled, tears cutting through her makeup. It was my family. She said, they, but Tyler's voice was louder. You disgust me. I was supposed to marry a woman who could stand beside me, not hide behind pity. He threw the ring down, the metal clinking beside her. The noise felt final. Her fingers trembled as she tried to pull herself up, but her leg wouldn't move. A few guests whispered she was faking. Others stared with pity she didn't want. The cold of the floor crept into her bones, but the shame burned hotter than anything she'd ever felt. The man she thought might save her once now looked at her like she was nothing. The priest lowered his eyes. The music stopped. Even the rain outside seemed to listen. Rachel tried to breathe, but the air felt too heavy. Cameras flashed as Tyler walked away through the doors, the storm waiting to swallow him. No one reached out. No one spoke her name. Her voice broke into a whisper only she could hear. I didn't lie. I only obeyed. Then silence. Her hands covered her face as tears mixed with blood. The taste of salt and iron filled her mouth. For the first time, she felt what it meant to be completely alone. Surrounded by people, the narrator's voice fades in, low and trembling. That was the day Rachel Carter lost everything. Love, dignity, family. In a world that worshipped perfection, she became a symbol of everything broken. But what no one knew was that the same rain that drowned her would one day wash her clean again. The memory of that morning still haunted Rachel like a wound that refused to close. The echo of Tyler's disgust, the whispers, the cold eyes, they all came from one decision she should never have agreed to. But 10 days before the wedding, she was not the broken woman on the church floor. She was just a daughter, desperate to please the people who had stopped seeing her as one of their own. Her father, Edward Carter, once ran a small trucking company that carried the family name. For decades it was their pride, their identity. But when the market shifted and the debts grew, the business collapsed faster than anyone could have imagined. Rachel remembered the night the letters came, one after another. Red stamps, shouting, "Final notice." Her mother, Helen, sat in silence, her face unreadable, while Edward clutched a glass of whiskey as if it could hold his world together. They never spoke about failure, only about appearances. Helen's voice was always calm, but her words could slice skin. She said the only way out was through Rebecca. The Evans family owned one of the biggest logistics firms in the country. Their son Tyler was ambitious, good-looking, and exactly the kind of man Helen thought her daughters should marry. When the engagement was arranged, Helen's relief was visible for the first time in years. The Carters could finally climb back to where they belonged, or at least where she believed they did. Rachel used to think love was a choice, but in that house, it was a transaction. After her accident 2 years earlier, love became something she owed instead of something she received. She still remembered the sound of screeching tires, the little boy frozen in the street, and her own body hitting the pavement when she pushed him out of the way. The doctors said it was a miracle she survived. Her mother called it a disgrace. Helen refused to visit her in the hospital. When she finally appeared, her words burned more than the pain in Rachel's leg. "You embarrassed this family the day you jumped in front of that truck. You ruined your future. Don't ruin your sister's." Rachel had believed that saving a life meant something. To her mother, it only meant shame. Rebecca was the opposite of her. Beautiful, confident, untouched by tragedy. She had always been the golden daughter, the one who could make their mother proud. Yet even perfection could break under pressure. One evening, just 10 days before the wedding, Rebecca came to Rachel's small room. Her eyes were swollen, mascara smudged. She said she couldn't go through with it. "I can't marry Tyler. I love someone else." Rachel stared at her. "You can't be serious. You know what's at stake." Rebecca shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't care about the money. I can't live a lie." But before Rachel could answer, Helen's voice cut through the doorway. "You'll marry him, or your father loses everything." The room fell silent. Rebecca's sobs turned into whispers. "Mum, please, there has to be another way." Helen's tone hardened. "There isn't, unless you want us on the streets." Rachel looked at her father, hoping for mercy, but his shoulders sagged under guilt. He wouldn't look her in the eyes. When Rebecca suggested the switch, it didn't sound like betrayal, it sounded like survival. "We look alike. No one would know. It's just one day," she said, her voice trembling. Rachel felt her stomach twist. One day you want me to lie to an entire family, to a man who doesn't even know me. Edward spoke softly, but his words carried weight. You owe us. Rachel, that prosthetic leg we paid for it gave you a second chance. Maybe this is how you repay it. She wanted to scream, wanted to remind them that a child's life was worth more than their pride. But every word died in her throat. She saw her father's trembling hands, her mother's cold stare, and Rebecca's desperate tears. Guilt and love twisted into the same chain. That night she couldn't sleep. The smell of antiseptic from her old hospital memories clung to her mind. She thought about the boy she saved, about how her life had been split in two ever since. Half of her wanted to believe her family still loved her. The other half knew they didn't. By dawn, she sat at her window, the prosthetic leg cold against the floor, her heart colder. When Helen entered her room the next morning, Rachel didn't speak. She just nodded. Better you than both of us starving, Helen said quietly, almost like a prayer. Rachel's chest tightened. The words sank deep, heavier than any wound she'd carried. And so she agreed, not out of love, not even out of fear, but because somewhere in the ruins of her heart, she still believed that maybe if she did this, they would see her again, not as a burden, but as family. She didn't know that the price would be everything she had left. The decision had already been made, but Rachel's heart still prayed for a miracle. The morning of the wedding smelled of roses and lies. Rebecca came to her room pale and shaking, her eyes swollen from crying. She whispered that it would only be for a moment, just until the vows were done. She promised to explain everything later, to tell Tyler the truth, to make it right. Rachel wanted to believe her. Maybe if she obeyed again, her mother would finally forgive her. Her father would look at her without shame, and her sister would be free. She didn't know that she was walking into her own execution disguised as a wedding. Rebecca kissed her on the cheek before leaving the room. Her lips were cold. For a second, Rachel caught her reflection in the mirror, and the image of a stranger stared back. The white dress was Rebecca's. The ring on her hand wasn't hers. And even her smile felt borrowed. She wasn't a bride. She was a cover-up, a substitute for perfection. When the ceremony began, the noise of whispers already crawled across the church. People noticed something off in the way she held the bouquet. The hesitation in her smile, the faint tremor of her hand gripping the wheel. Rachel remembered how she tried to breathe, counting each second until it would be over. But when Tyler lifted the veil, the world cracked open. The next few minutes blurred into noise and chaos. The camera flashes, the gasps, the laughter, every sound was a weapon. Tyler's voice cut through it all, calling her a liar. A fraud. She tried to speak, to tell him she didn't choose this. But the crowd was already feeding on her humiliation. When she fell, the collective gasp became a symphony of cruelty. Some guests recorded, some whispered, some smiled behind their phones. By the time she hit the floor, she was no longer a person, just a headline waiting to happen. By evening, her name was everywhere. Number, fake bride. Number, disabled deception. Number, Evans scandal. Every social media feed carried her face, frozen in tears, her prosthetic leg showing beneath torn lace. News anchors debated whether she had planned it. Influencers posted reaction videos mocking her. Her phone exploded with messages she couldn't bear to open. The internet didn't care about truth. It only cared about the story. Rachel sat in her small apartment, the wedding dress still clinging to her skin like guilt. She turned on the TV, only to see her mother's face staring back. Helen looked calm, collected, a picture of composure. She told the reporter they had no idea what Rachel was planning. She said Rebecca was devastated, that the family was deceived, just like everyone else. Rachel's hands trembled. Her father nodded beside Helen, avoiding the camera. He looked small, older, but not guilty, just tired. The host called Rachel unstable, suggested that trauma from her accident had made her desperate for attention. Helen didn't correct him. Instead, she sighed and said the family was praying for Rachel's healing. That was the moment Rachel realized she had been erased. Her phone buzzed with another notification. Someone had edited a video of her falling with dramatic music. Captioned, "The Bride Who Lied." Millions of views in hours. She couldn't breathe. Every click was a nail sealing her into a coffin built of shame. She turned off the TV, but the voices kept echoing in her mind. She tried calling Rebecca, but the line went straight to voicemail. The next day, Rebecca's number was disconnected. Neighbors avoided her eyes. Reporters camped outside the gate. Someone left a box of wilted roses at her door with a note, "You got what you deserved." Rachel didn't cry at first. She just sat there, numb, listening to the ticking clock. Then slowly, the numbness cracked. Anger seeped through like floodwater. She ripped off her veil, her gloves, her necklace, every symbol of obedience that had led her to this ruin. In the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. The mascara smeared, her hair tangled, her eyes hollow. She looked like a ghost who had watched her own life burn. Memories of the accident flashed through her mind, the child's terrified face, the pain, the light fading. She had thought she'd lost everything that day. She was wrong. Pain had only borrowed her body then. Now it had taken her soul. The wedding ring Tyler had dropped still sat on the table. She picked it up, the metal cold against her palm. And for a moment, she almost believed it belonged to her. Then she clenched her fist until it hurt. The lies, the betrayal, the humiliation, they all pressed against her chest until she couldn't breathe. She whispered to the empty room, her voice barely a breath. "If love and family can both betray you, what's left?" No one answered. The only sound was the quiet tear of fabric as she ripped the dress apart piece by piece until nothing was left but shreds. The silk fell around her like snow. She sat on the floor, surrounded by fragments of a life that was never hers. And for the first time, she stopped hoping someone would save her. The church was nearly empty when the rain began to pour harder. The marble steps glistened beneath the streetlight, and Rachel sat there, soaked through her torn dress, unable to move. Her wheelchair lay a few feet away, toppled from when she had fallen, trying to crawl out of sight. The world had already seen enough of her, every cruel whisper. Every camera flash replayed in her mind, like a punishment she couldn't escape. Headlights cut through the storm. A black sedan slowed near the gate, its wipers sweeping fast against the downpour. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a grey shirt and no umbrella. He squinted through the rain, spotting her on the steps. For a second, Rachel thought he would just stare like the others, then leave. Most people did, but he didn't. He jogged toward her, holding one hand above his eyes. "Are you hurt?" She turned away, her voice sharp and hoarse. "Please don't. I'm fine. Just go." He stopped a few feet away, water dripping from his hair. "You don't look fine." His tone wasn't pity, just quiet observation. Rachel bit her lip, anger mixing with shame. She didn't want kindness. It always came with judgment. Her voice cracked. "Do me a favor. Pretend you didn't see me." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but before I go, let me at least help you get out of the rain." He lifted her wheelchair upright, checked the brakes, and gently placed it beside her. When he saw her torn hands, he frowned. "You're bleeding." She looked down at her scraped palms, half surprised by the pain. "Doesn't matter. Nothing matters." He crouched beside her, his voice softer now. "Maybe, but I think it still matters to you. You're still here." "Aren't you?" That stopped her. For a long second, she just stared at him, rain running down her face like tears she couldn't hide anymore. He took out his phone. "I can call someone for you. A friend. Family." She cut him off, shaking her head violently. "No one's coming." He studied her, realizing she meant it. Then he slipped his phone back into his pocket. "Okay, then I'll stay until you figure out where you want to go." Rachel blinked. "What, you don't have to." He smiled faintly. "I know. That's why I'm staying." She almost laughed at the absurdity of it, a stranger in the middle of a storm, wasting time on a woman everyone else had already judged. When a gust of wind blew a small box of scattered belongings from her bag: lipstick, keys, her mother's old brooch. Daniel wordlessly began gathering them. He didn't ask questions. He just picked up each item carefully, even the crushed petals of a flower that had fallen from her hair. When he handed them to her, his hands were trembling from the cold. She took the box back, her voice a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" He shrugged. "Because if I were sitting here, I'd want someone to remind me I wasn't invisible." Something in his voice broke through the wall she'd built. It wasn't sympathy. It was recognition. He wasn't there to save her, just to see her. He slipped off his coat and draped it gently over her shoulders. She started to protest, but he stopped her with a quiet look. "Keep it. It's not charity, just warmth." They sat in silence for a while. Rain softened into mist, the world shrinking to the space between them. Finally, he stood. "My name's Daniel. My car's just over there. If you let me, I can wait with you until it stops. You don't have to talk. I'll just sit." Rachel looked at him for a long moment. Every instinct told her to refuse, to stay alone in her humiliation. But something in his eyes, steady, tired, kind, made her nod. "Just for a minute," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "That's long enough." Daniel walked back to his car and returned with an old yellow umbrella. He opened it over her, the faint smell of rain and detergent mixing with the cold night air. For the first time since the wedding, she didn't feel exposed. They stayed like that, sharing silence under the yellow light, until the storm began to fade. And when he finally said goodbye, she realized something she hadn't felt in a long time, that maybe not everyone came to hurt her. Rachel sat there long after the car's taillights vanished into the rain. The world was quiet again, except for the sound of water dripping from the church roof. Daniel's coat lay heavy on her shoulders, still carrying the warmth of someone who hadn't judged her. She held onto it like proof that kindness still existed, though part of her didn't quite believe it. Her body trembled, exhaustion mixing with disbelief. "What kind of man stayed for no reason?" she whispered into the dark, half to herself. "You shouldn't have stopped. No one ever does." Then she heard small footsteps splashing through puddles. Rachel looked up, startled. A little girl stood at the bottom of the stairs, holding a yellow umbrella so big it nearly hid her face. Her red rain boots squished with every step as she climbed toward her. Rachel's first instinct was panic. She didn't want anyone, especially a child, to see her like this. "You shouldn't be out here, sweetheart," she said softly, voice hoarse. "Where's your dad?" The girl pointed behind her. "He's in the car. He said I could give you this." Rachel frowned. The girl opened her small hand. A paper flower rested inside, crumpled and wet, but still bright yellow. "I made it at school," the girl said proudly. "It got a little ruined. But you look like you needed it." For a second, Rachel didn't move. Her hands were dirty, her dress torn, her face streaked with rain and makeup. She wasn't someone little girls should talk to. She shook her head gently. "That's very sweet of you, but you should keep it." The girl tilted her head, confused. "But Daddy said when someone looks sad, you give them a little sunshine." Rachel's throat tightened. She tried to smile but failed. "You're kind," she said quietly. The girl grinned. "My name's Lily, like the flower. You have pretty hair. It's messy, but I like it." The compliment caught Rachel off guard. She laughed a small, surprised sound that came out awkwardly, almost as if she'd forgotten how to do it. Lily's eyes lit up. "See," you smiled. "My teacher says that means the medicine worked." Rachel blinked. "Medicine?" Lily nodded seriously. "Smiling medicine. Daddy says laughter's how people heal." Then she glanced around, realizing her hair and boots were soaked, her face scrunched. "Oh no. Daddy's gonna say I'm all wet again." Rachel found herself smiling for real this time. Maybe he won't mind. He looks like a nice man. Lily shrugged like it didn't matter. "He's okay. He burns toast, but makes good pancakes." They both laughed, and for a fleeting moment, the air between them didn't feel heavy. It was awkward, tender, and real. Two strangers and a child standing in the wreckage of a storm, trying to pretend the world wasn't broken. Rachel hesitated, then reached out her hand. "May I?" she asked softly. Lily nodded and placed the damp paper flower in her palm. The paper stuck to Rachel's skin, fragile and trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. Lily just smiled again. "Daddy says bad weather never lasts forever, even the really bad ones." Behind them, Daniel appeared at the edge of the light, holding another umbrella. His expression was calm, almost cautious. He didn't interrupt, just waited. Rachel met his eyes, unsure what to say. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "You didn't have to come back." Daniel stepped closer, his voice low. "I didn't come back to fix anything. Just didn't want her walking into the rain alone." Rachel nodded, embarrassed by how much relief she felt, hearing that. Daniel handed her a small card, simple, worn at the edges. "If you ever need someone who listens, call me. No judgment, no pity." He slipped it into her hand and gave a faint smile. Then he turned toward his car, calling softly for Lily. The girl waved one last time before skipping back, splashing water with every step. Rachel sat there, the yellow umbrella leaning beside her, Daniel's coat around her shoulders, and the paper flower trembling in her palm. For a while, she just watched the rain. The streetlight flickered above her, catching the reflection of the umbrella's yellow glow. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a miracle. But it was the first time she let someone stay long enough to be kind. And that awkward, messy, human was its own kind of healing. That yellow umbrella stayed in Rachel's kitchen for days. Every time she saw it, she thought about the little girl who said, "Bad weather never lasts." But the storm around her didn't end. The tabloids called her the fraud bride. Talk shows replayed her fall from the wheelchair, turning her pain into entertainment. Strangers online picked her apart, like a headline they owned. Within a week, her clinic called to say she didn't need to come back. Clients were cancelling appointments. The board didn't want the scandal connected to their name. Rachel sat on the floor beside her phone, surrounded by unopened mail and silence. She hadn't answered a single call. She couldn't bear to read what people were saying. Her name wasn't a person anymore. It was a punchline. When her phone buzzed again, she almost ignored it. But the number wasn't familiar. The message read, "You don't know me well, but I wanted to say, you're not your headlines." That was all. No signature. No emoji. Just words that felt oddly human. She stared at them for a long time before realizing it was Daniel. She didn't reply at first. What could she possibly say? Days passed. And then another message came. "I saw the news. People can be cruel when they forget others can bleed. Hope you're eating." She read it 5 times before typing back one word. "Trying." He answered, "Trying counts." That night, she ate her first real meal in days. It wasn't much, just soup, but it was warm. And when she went to bed, she didn't cry herself to sleep. The next morning, another message came. "Lily keeps asking if you still have the flower." Rachel smiled for the first time since the wedding. She wrote back, "It's in my kitchen. It's a little wilted now." Daniel replied, "That's okay. Some flowers are stronger after the rain." Their messages became small anchors in her long, quiet days. They never talked for hours, never crossed boundaries. Sometimes he sent a photo of Lily's drawings or a recipe for pancakes. Sometimes she told him about the stray cat that started sleeping outside her window. Each message reminded her that she was still part of the world. The ache in her chest didn't vanish, but it stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like a bruise. One evening, she asked him why he bothered. He replied, "Because someone once stayed for me when no one else did." His honesty caught her off guard. She didn't ask for details. It was enough to know he understood the silence of being left behind. That night, she laughed out loud at one of Lily's jokes. He texted. The sound startled her. It had been weeks since she'd laughed without guilt. Rachel began walking outside again. Not far. Just to the corner, cafe for coffee. The barista recognized her from the news, but didn't say anything. For the first time, she didn't look away. She was still the woman people whispered about. But inside, something had shifted. She could breathe again. As she sat by the window that evening, her phone buzzed. Daniel had sent un simple message. "Proud of you today." No context. No reason. She didn't know how he knew, but she smiled. Maybe healing didn't come from grand gestures or long talks. Sometimes it came from a stranger who refused to disappear. It started with a message from Daniel one Friday afternoon. "Lily has an art show at school tonight. She really wants you to come. No pressure." Rachel read it 3 times, her heart racing. It had been months since she'd gone anywhere crowded. The thought of facing people again, of being recognized as the woman from the headlines, made her stomach tighten. But then she remembered Lily's paper flower, still sitting in a glass by the window. The petals were fragile, but still bright yellow. Maybe bad weather really didn't last forever. She typed back, "What time?" When she arrived at the elementary school, the parking lot was already full. Laughter and chatter spilled from the gym, echoing down the hallway. Rachel hesitated at the door, her hand gripping the wheel of her chair. Her chest felt tight. She almost turned around. But then she saw Daniel waving from across the room. He looked different in the warm light, calm, certain, like someone who had been waiting for her. "You made it," he said, smiling. She tried to smile back. "I almost didn't." His voice softened. "I'm glad you did. Lily will be over the moon." The little girl appeared seconds later, her ponytail bouncing, her eyes wide with excitement. "Rachel, you came." She threw her arms around Rachel's shoulders. And for a moment, Rachel froze. Then she hugged her back. "I wouldn't miss it," she said quietly. Lily grabbed her hand, tugging her toward a display of paintings along the back wall. "This one's mine," the paper read. "When bad days end." Rachel stared. The painting was messy and colorful, full of uneven brushstrokes and wild imagination. A woman sat under a yellow umbrella, smiling at the sky, while rain turned into sunlight. Next to her stood a man and a little girl holding hands. The colors were imperfect, but the feeling was unmistakable hope. Lily beamed. "That's you," she said proudly. "You made my daddy smile again." Rachel's throat tightened. For a moment, she couldn't speak. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. Not since the accident, not since her own family made her feel like a burden. She looked at Daniel, who stood quietly beside them, his expression soft, almost vulnerable. The world around her faded, the laughter, the noise, the stares. All she could feel was the weight of Lily's words and the warmth of something unfamiliar spreading through her chest. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. But they weren't the same tears she'd cried at the church. These were lighter. They carried gratitude, not shame. She brushed them away quickly, embarrassed. But Lily only smiled wider. "See, I told you bad days end." Rachel laughed, the sound trembling but free. "You did, didn't you?" Daniel met her gaze. And for a moment, they didn't need words. The rest of the evening passed in gentle blur. Lily showed them every painting in the room, explaining each one with the importance only a child could give. Rachel found herself laughing again, not politely, but honestly. Every time she looked up, Daniel was nearby, not hovering, just present. When the show ended, he walked her to her car. "Thank you for coming," he said. "It meant a lot to Lily." Rachel smiled. "It meant more to me than you know." As she drove home, the painting stayed in her mind, the woman under the umbrella, the light breaking through. For the first time in a long time, she believed the message written in a child's brushstrokes. Maybe bad days really did end. After the art show, things felt lighter for a while. Rachel laughed more, slept longer, and the world didn't seem quite so cruel. But peace, she learned, never came without interruption. It was almost midnight when her phone rang. The name on the screen made her heart drop. Daniel. His voice on the other end was frantic, cracking between words. "It's Lily. She's having a Zeitzere. I called an ambulance. I don't know what to do. Please." Rachel didn't think. She just moved. She threw on the nearest jacket, grabbed her keys, and drove through the sleeping city. The streets blurred under the flickering glow of traffic lights. Her chest felt tight with memories of other nights like this. Nights of hospitals, pain, and waiting for someone to say it would be okay. When she reached the emergency entrance, the cold air hit her like a wall. Sirens echoed in the distance. She saw Daniel pacing by the doors, his face pale, his hands trembling. Rachel called out, but he didn't seem to hear until she touched his arm. He turned, his eyes wide and wet. They're taking her in now. She stopped breathing for a second, and then his voice broke. Rachel squeezed his hand. She's in the right place now. Breathe. Just breathe. For a moment, they stood like that, two people holding on to the edge of fear, trying not to fall apart. Inside, the hospital smelled of antiseptic and sleeplessness. The walls hummed with quiet chaos. They sat side by side in the waiting area. Beneath the harsh white lights, Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. His voice was a whisper. Every time I think I'm getting better at this, something like this happens, and I feel useless again. Rachel looked at him, seeing not the strong, steady man who'd helped her heal, but a father drowning in helpless love. You're not useless, she said softly. You're scared. That's what love does. He laughed weakly, the sound brittle. You're calm. How are you calm? She exhaled. I'm not. I just learned how to hold the panic quietly. After my accident, I used to wake up in the middle of the night convinced I'd never matter again. I thought the world had left me behind. But then someone reminded me that sometimes surviving is enough. Tonight, you're surviving too. They fell silent for a while. Nurses walked by. A machine beeped somewhere down the hall. The clock above them ticked loudly, as if mocking their stillness. Finally, Daniel spoke. She's all I have. You know, when her mum left, I promised I'd make sure Lily never felt unloved. But nights like this make me wonder if I can keep that promise. Rachel's throat tightened. You already have. Love isn't measured by how calm you stay. It's measured by how you show up, even when you're terrified. The doors opened, and a doctor approached. Daniel stood so fast, he almost tripped. The Zeiture stopped. The doctor said, she's stable now. You can see her in a few minutes. Relief crashed through Daniel so strong, his knees almost gave out. Rachel caught his arm before he could stumble. He covered his face with his hands, tears finally breaking through. She's okay. He kept repeating, she's okay. When they were allowed into the room, Lily lay small and pale beneath the white hospital sheets. Her chest rose and fell slowly. Daniel sank to his knees beside the bed, taking her hand in both of his. Hey, sweetheart, I'm here. You scared me half to death. Rachel stood at the foot of the bed, watching them. A lump formed in her throat. When Lily's eyes fluttered open, Daniel's face crumpled with relief. Daddy, she whispered. You came. He laughed through tears. Always. She smiled faintly, then fell asleep again. The room was quiet, except for the steady beep of the monitor. Daniel turned to Rachel, his voice barely a whisper. I can't do this alone. She moved closer, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. You don't have to. For a long time, they just stood there, in silence, surrounded by the hum of machines and the rhythm of Lily's breathing. The chaos of the night faded into stillness. Somewhere deep inside, Rachel felt something shift again, the line between friendship and something more. But she didn't name it. Not yet. Tonight wasn't about that. Tonight was about staying. And for the first time in years, both of them did. Autumn came softly that year, like the world was finally learning to breathe again. The trees in Portland turned to gold, and the air smelled of rain and wood smoke. For Rachel, The city no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a place where life could begin again. After the night at the hospital, something unspoken had settled between her and Daniel. They texted every day, met for coffee, sometimes dinner. But the silence between them often said more than words ever could. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel invited her and Lily to the park. The air was crisp, the sky pale blue, and the leaves swirled like tiny flames in the breeze. Lily ran ahead, chasing a squirrel with her laughter echoing across the trees. Rachel watched her, smiling. For months, that sound had been Daniel's reason to keep going. Now, it was hers too. They sat on a wooden bench under a canopy of maple leaves, sunlight flickering through the branches. For a while, neither of them spoke. The peace felt fragile, as if any word might break it. Daniel broke the silence first. That day, at the hospital, he said quietly, "I realize something. I don't think I've ever been that scared before." Rachel nodded. "Fear can hollow you out." His eyes softened. "It also shows you who matters. You were the first person I called." She looked down at her hands, unsure how to answer. "Maybe I was just there." He shook his head. "No, you showed up. You always do." The wind rustled above them, and a few leaves drifted into Rachel's lap. She brushed them away slowly, her heart tightening. Daniel turned to her, voice low and steady. "I need to tell you something, and it might ruin everything. But keeping it in feels worse." She held her breath. "I didn't stop that day in the rain just to help someone. I stopped because something about you made me want to stay. And over time, that feeling hasn't gone away. It's grown. I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hung between them like the soft light through the trees. Rachel's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but the fear came first. "You shouldn't," she whispered. "I'm not who you think I am. I'm broken. Daniel, I'm half of what I used to be." He reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "Then I'll love every half twice as much." His eyes didn't waver. "You're not broken. You're just someone who had to learn how to live differently." Her throat burned with tears. She couldn't stop. All her life, she had waited for someone to say those words, not out of pity, but truth. She let out a shaky laugh, part sob, part relief. "You're too good at this," she said. He smiled faintly. "No, I'm just tired of walking away from what feels right." Rachel looked up, and for the first time, the world didn't feel cruel. It felt kind. She leaned forward, and he met her halfway. The kiss was soft, tentative, almost shy, but it carried every quiet moment they had shared, every unspoken promise of being there when life turned hard. A small voice broke through the silence. Finally, Rachel and Daniel pulled apart to see Lily standing a few feet away, hands on her hips, grinning. "I've been waiting forever for you two to do that." Daniel laughed, his forehead resting against Rachel's as she wiped her tears, smiling through them. "Maybe bad days really do end," she said. He nodded, eyes bright. "They always do when you stay long enough to see the sunrise." A year passed like a quiet breath, soft and steady. The storms that once tore Rachel's world apart had given way to calm mornings and gentle laughter. Life with Daniel and Lily became something simple and whole. There were still scars, still nights when memories whispered too loudly. But now there was also warmth, the kind that made the pain easier to hold. One Sunday afternoon, Daniel asked if she wanted to go somewhere special. When she saw the turnoff for the old church road, her hands tightened in her lap. The place she had fallen was the same place he had found her. The church stood at the edge of town, no longer the cold monument of shame it once was. Its doors were freshly painted white, and behind it stretched a small garden. Rows of sunflowers faced the sky, their golden faces turning toward the light. Rachel's breath caught. The last time she had been here, she had been on the floor, her dress torn, her heart shattered. Now, the air smelled of earth and new beginnings. Lily ran ahead, laughing, her yellow dress brushing against the flowers. "Daddy, look, they're taller than me," Rachel smiled, her eyes glistening. "She's right. They're beautiful." Daniel pushed her wheelchair slowly along the path. Every creak of the gravel felt like the sound of old ghosts finally fading away. He stopped near the archway where the vows should have been spoken a year ago. It was quiet except for the soft rustle of leaves and Lily's laughter in the distance. For a while, neither spoke. Then Daniel knelt down beside her, the same way he had at the hospital, steady and sure. "This place took everything from you once," he said softly, "but maybe it's time it gives something back." Rachel looked around, her throat tight. "I used to hate this place," she admitted. "Every time it rained, I'd dream of running away from that moment. From them. From me." Daniel's hand found hers. "You did run, but you also came back. Not to erase the past, but to see that it doesn't own you anymore." She looked at him, tears trembling on her lashes. "You make it sound so easy." He smiled gently. "It isn't. That's why I'm staying." The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of rain and flowers. Daniel looked into her eyes. "He can't promise forever," he said. "Forever's too big for people like us. But I can promise to stay, through good days, through bad ones. I'll stay." Rachel felt something in her chest loosen, like a knot finally coming undone. She nodded slowly, tears falling without fear this time. "I don't need forever," she whispered. "Just today, just someone who doesn't walk away." He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to hers. The sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling warmth across their faces. Lily came running, holding 2 sunflowers in her hands. "One for you, Mommy Rachel, and one for Daddy." Rachel froze at the word, her heart swelling with a mix of surprise and joy. Daniel chuckled softly, his voice shaking. "Guess we've been promoted." Rachel laughed through her tears. "It seems so." The 3 of them sat together in the garden, surrounded by yellow blooms, swaying gently in the wind. The same church that had once echoed with cruelty now held only peace. Rachel closed her eyes, letting the warmth sink in. For the first time, she wasn't haunted by what happened there. She was simply grateful for what had come after. And as the sun dipped lower, turning everything golden, she finally believed what she once couldn't. Some endings are just beginnings wearing different clothes. A year after that day in the sunflower garden, life had settled into something soft and steady. The small clinic Rachel opened on the edge of town was finally finished. The sign outside read, "The Healing Haven," in Daniel's careful handwriting, with a small yellow flower painted by Lily in the corner. Inside, the scent of pine mixed with the sound of animals breathing, dogs recovering from surgery, cats purring from warmth, and people learning to trust again. Every morning, Daniel fixed something new, the leaky faucet, the light switch that buzzed while Lily fed the kittens and kept everyone laughing. Rachel no longer hid her prosthetic leg under long skirts. The world had changed shape around her, not through miracles, but through time and hands that stayed. One afternoon, as the last appointment ended, Rachel sat by the window sorting files. The light was golden, peaceful, until the bell above the door rang. She looked up, expecting Daniel or a client. Instead, a voice she hadn't heard in years froze her in place. Rachel. Her name trembled in the air, like an old song she wasn't ready to hear. Rebecca stood in the doorway, thinner, her hair shorter, her eyes red from crying. She looked like someone who'd been running for a long time and had finally stopped. Rachel's heart jolted, a strange mix of anger and longing. For a second, neither spoke. The air between them was thick, with everything unsaid. Rebecca's voice cracked. "I almost didn't come. I didn't think you'd want to see me." Rachel swallowed hard. "I didn't." The words came out sharper than she intended, but she didn't take them back. Rebecca flinched, eyes lowering. "I wouldn't blame you. You should hate me." Rachel let out a slow breath. Hate was easier once. Now it just felt heavy. "Why are you here?" Rebecca stepped closer, her hands trembling. "Because I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see you on that church floor. I hear Mom lying to the cameras, Dad looking away, and me running. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would all disappear. But it didn't. It followed me." Rachel studied her sister's face, older, smaller somehow, cracked open by guilt. The part of her that had once longed for this moment didn't know what to do with it now. She wanted to yell, to ask why she had to be the one who suffered for everyone's choices. But when she spoke, her voice was quiet. "You left me when I needed you most." Rebecca nodded, tears spilling. "I know. I told myself you'd be fine, that you were stronger than me. But the truth is, I was just a coward. I married no one. I ran from everything, and I lost myself trying to forget what I did to you." Rachel's chest ached. She turned away, looking at the sunlight streaming across the floor. "I used to wish you'd say that," she whispered, "but I don't know what to do with it now." Rebecca stepped closer but stopped, afraid. "Then, don't forgive me. Just tell me how to make it right." Rachel looked back at her. "Forgiveness doesn't start with fixing the past," she said softly. "It starts with showing up and staying, even when it's uncomfortable." For a moment, Rebecca didn't breathe. Then Rachel motioned toward the kennel. "We always need help cleaning cages," she said quietly. "If you want to stay, start there." Rebecca blinked, unsure if she heard right. "You'd let me," Rachel nodded once. "You asked how to make it right. This is a start." Rebecca crossed the room, slowly, like approaching something sacred. When she knelt beside the first cage, wiping the floor, her hands shook. Rachel watched her, not with anger, but with the kind of tired compassion that comes only after surviving. Outside, Daniel and Lily returned from the store. Lily ran in first, holding a bag of treats. "Hi, Aunt Rebecca," she chirped, as if forgiveness were the easiest thing in the world. Rebecca froze, eyes wide. Rachel smiled faintly. "Kids don't carry the same weight we do. Maybe that's why they heal faster." As the sun dipped behind the trees, the clinic filled with the sounds of life again. Laughter, soft barking, quiet breathing. Rachel looked around the small space she had built from everything once broken. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Pain doesn't vanish. It becomes part of the foundation. You just learn to build something kind on top of it." Daniel slipped his arm around her shoulders, Lily giggling nearby. and Rebecca scrubbing cages in quiet atonement. The healing haven glowed under the evening light, not a place of perfection, but of peace earned the hard way. And for the first time, Rachel realized forgiveness wasn't a word. It was a choice one you had to keep making. Long after the hurt was gone, her life became a journey from humiliation to hope, proof that even shattered souls can bloom again when touched by kindness. Her story reminds us that love is not about perfection, but about staying when it hurts, and forgiving when it's hardest. Because sometimes, the people who break us also teach us how to rebuild. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments and let others feel its echo. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Emotional Echoes, where every heart finds a reflection